The concept of food as medicine is not new. It's a very old concept. I've titled my talk as Heal Thyself because our body and nature has tremendous power to heal ourselves provided we give it the right environment. So I'm going to cover food and the whole aspect of lifestyle along with it. Just a disclaimer, this is a talk for only educational purposes. This is not medical advice in any manner. Please consult with your physicians for individualized care and treatment. So, naturopathy may be a term that you may have heard, and if I define it in very simple terms, it's the science of harnessing the power of body's natural healing abilities by providing it an optimal environment. The reason I've emphasized optimal environment because that's the real key. We don't need a lot of things for the body to do, provided we give it the right environment. The body has that ability, but the question is, are we allowing it to get the right environment? And that's what I'm going to cover through this next few minutes. So, what is disease? When the body is not at ease, that is disease. We're made up of 5 elements, as has been expounded in the ancient Indian civilization and philosophy and Ayurveda. We are composed of 5 different elements. And there is buildup of toxins in our body where it leads to acute changes, and then when acute changes are not properly addressed, it leads to chronic problems, which leads to chronic diseases. There are 3 different processes. Those are the main ones that lead us to diseases, which, as I mentioned, acute inflammation over time building up into chronic inflammation. We are bombarded with toxins, and when those toxins starts entering our cells, the cells don't function like they should. You take a cell, take a group of cells, it's a tissue, take a group of tissue, it's an organ, you take a group of organs, it's an organ system. Together, organ systems forms our body. So if the cells are not functioning properly, then the whole body doesn't function well. Insulin resistance is a term that may have been also pushed out a lot lately. It basically means is that the body is not able to process a very important hormone that our body makes called insulin. And the body keeps making more and more of it because it's not doing what it's supposed to do, and that's called insulin resistance, which this slide here exemplifies that in a very good manner. So it's kind of a domino effect where things happen in a sequence that lead to insulin resistance. When the total fat intake in our diet exceeds 15% of our total calories, it starts blocking the action of the insulin receptor on the cell. In other words, if I give a simple analogy, if there is a chewing gum blocking the door latch, even if you have the key in form of the insulin, it is not going to open the lock, which is the receptor. So as the fat starts building up, it creates different chemical reactions inside the cell, which in turn leads to blocking the action of the insulin receptor. So the glucose gets trapped in the blood without being allowed to enter into the cells where it's utilized for energy generation. And that's where your sugar starts going up, the body makes more insulin, but the process keeps getting worse and worse, and eventually you are told to be pre-diabetic, or you have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, eventually diabetes. So that's the cascade that we want to prevent. Shifting gears a little bit, and again, this slide is before Corona pandemic hit the whole world. So this is looking at the causes of death, and the biggest circle, the yellow one, is heart and heart-related diseases. The second big one, orange, is cancer. Corona obviously took over somewhere in the middle there, respiratory diseases. But when we look at this and we look at the very smallest cause of death in the world, we focus a lot on obviously, war and terrorism and those which are equally important. I'm not at all belittling them. But we see millions of people dying of heart disease and cancer every day, and we don't hear that kind of chatter in the media or in public discourse. So I do think we need to focus more on the real killers of our time, and not fixate on just one aspect of things. So we are in US here, and I'm going to talk about the US food consumption as a percentage of calories from different sources. You see that biggest chunk of that pie there on the chart is 63% is coming from processed foods. Foods that have added oils and sugars and refined grains. Food that has been highly modified, that is actually a misnomer to call it food. 25% comes from meat, dairy, eggs. 24%, the remaining, you can see in dark and light green. Only half of that, the 12%, my bad, actually not 24, it's 12%, and only half of that, 6%, is the portion that you get from actual fresh fruits, vegetables, and beans and whole grains. The dark green portion, the remaining 6%, is actually processed products. So if you eat a fig bar, it's considered plant food, but it's highly processed. So the goal or the challenge for us is to go from 6% of our daily consumption in form of actual fruits and vegetables and fresh foods to taking it to something close to maybe 70, 80, 90%. Getting out of that 63% processed food category. So how do we get our body back at ease? And there are 6 aspects to it. The first aspect is to cleanse our elements. The term Panch Bhut Shuddhi is used in Sanskrit. Panch means 5, Bhut means the elements, and Shuddhi means the cleansing process of it. Food, focusing on predominant whole plant foods, activity, rest and relaxation, having a positive mindset, and detoxification. Those are the aspects through which we can achieve that. Talking about the 5 elements, we are made up of air, fire, water, sky, or space, and earth, in a different proportion of those combination of those elements. And when we get out of touch of those elements, we start seeing diseases. When we don't get exposed to sunlight, when we don't get in contact with Mother Earth, when we breathe polluted air, when we consume contaminated water, all those factors changes our physiology because it's altering the basic elements in our body. So getting the elements back in shape, just as simple as going out for a walk in the sun and having bare feet, so you're connecting back to nature with your bare feet, and you're getting exposure to the sun, you're getting exposure to the air, you're using some form of fasting overnight, which creates space in your body. So connecting back with nature is very important and a vital step. The second step is stop feeding crap into your body. This is a slide I used in the last year's Yoga Day presentation, and it's quite catchy, but it gets the message through. We really need to stop the carbohydrate drinks, diet or regular, doesn't matter, both are equally bad. Refined sugars, processed foods that are really so processed that it's really misnomer to call them foods, and things that have a lot of added preservatives and pesticides and colors and dyes that is really changing the character of food. Caloric density is a concept which is very simple but very profound. Looking at how many calories you can get from a pound of any particular food, that's caloric density. So you're looking at 5 different stomachs in this slide. Each has different types of food and each carries 500 calories. Without any nutrition science, if I just showed you the slide and I asked you what are the type of foods that can make you full, satiated, get you a lot of nutrients and vitamins and energy, most of the people will realize that it's the fruits and vegetables and the potato, rice and beans, and not the meat and cheese and oil, which really does not have any fiber and very little nutrients, and they're higher in calories, but they don't carry that much volume. Our stomach doesn't have any calorie receptors. It has volume receptors. So the more volume of food we can eat with lower calories, the more satiated we feel, the more our natural food mechanisms and satiety mechanisms are satisfied. So kind of a little busy slide, but the message I'm trying to get through is when you eat a whole food, plant-based way of eating, you're getting a lot of different nutrients. If you look at the plate on the left side of the screen, half of it is filled with fruits and vegetables, 25% coming from plant proteins from beans and legumes and whole grains, and remaining is the whole grains. So the focus is wholesome foods with lots of water and spices. You are getting a lot of fiber, which provides the best raw material for your body and the microbiome. We carry trillions of bacteria in our gut, and having the right type of bacteria is very necessary. So if you provided the right type of foods which has different types of fibers, it's going to flourish into the best possible microbiome. And on the right side of the screen you can see that there are lots of different colorful fruits and vegetables. We need all those colors in our diet on a weekly basis. We don't have to necessarily have them in a single day, but you can see 8 out of 10 Americans don't eat enough colors. They may eat maybe 2 or 3 different fruits and vegetables in their whole life. That's what we need to change, is crowd our food with good foods, that there is not much space left for the bad foods. Another way to look at whole food plant-based way of eating is the traffic light system. So the green foods you see on the top are the ones that you eat as much as you like without any restriction on the volume, which includes starchy and non-starchy vegetables, beans, lentils, fruits, intact whole grains, spices, and a lot of water. The yellow foods are the ones which are having good nutrients, but they are also higher in fat, even if they're coming from plant-based sources. So you want to limit them to a minimum and not overdo them. And the red foods are the ones that you really want to avoid, because those are the processed foods, the animal sources of foods, refined sugars and oils which are high in calories, zero fiber and low in nutrients. So really focusing on the green with some yellow and working on avoiding the red is the goal. When we exercise, we are, again, as I gave the example earlier, it could be whatever type of exercise, but just connecting back with nature, getting the sunlight, getting the fresh air, grounding with soil, we are focusing on the very important aspect of our health, which is activity. So food is hugely important, as we talked, focusing on the whole plant foods. As you couple it with activity, you get even more synergistic effect. We had a wonderful session on different types of asanas, the Bhujangasana, the Tadasana, the Kati Chakrasanas. Those are focused more towards digestion because primarily they help create space in our body. Vajrasana is one of the only asanas, to my knowledge, that you can do on a full stomach. All the other ones should be done on an empty stomach, but Vajrasana can be done after eating, and it actually helps you aid digestion. There are also different types of pranayamas, which is Kapalbhati, which focuses on abdominal breathing, Agnisar Pranayama, and Bhastrika, which again focuses on expanding your lungs and getting good air in and out. Rest and relaxation, again, an overarching concept. It includes good sleep, good breathing, deep breathing, having a proper mindset through the practice of meditation and yoga, where we understand how we align our body and mind and spirit to the universe. Because we are part of this divine geometry, and if we get ourselves aligned back to that divine geometry, everything starts falling back in place. I believe there is a session on Nindra Yoga, which is going to go deeper into, helping us with better sleep. But just looking at the common situations that we see in sleep in today's time is everybody has issues with insomnia, and a large aspect of that is coming from the amount of blue light exposure that we get from our tablets and iPhones and devices. We are not designed to handle that much blue light. Blue light is good, it gets us waked up and ready for the day, and we need it through the day. But as the day goes down, as the sun goes down, we need to also work on winding ourselves down. So when we expose ourselves to a lot of blue light, we don't get that right amount of melatonin, which is a very necessary chemical that releases in our brain to help us fall asleep. So having a routine, at least an hour or 2 hours before your bedtime, where you are listening to some relaxing music or meditating, reading or writing something peaceful that helps you wind down away from the blue screens. And if you do have to expose yourself to blue light because of work or whatever, wear a blue blocker goggle. When you wear a blue blocker goggle, it helps cut down the blue light exposure. And lastly, using your bedroom for, especially your bed, for only sleeping and being intimate. Don't eat, watch TV, and do things in your bed that takes you away and conditions your mind to think that going to bed means something else. So it's a routine that you need to work on. Detoxification is a huge topic, and yes, avoiding tobacco and alcohol is the one that will come to your mind right away, but more than that, we are bombarded with myriad of toxins in our food, in our water, in our air. And so detoxification is not just a luxury, it's a necessity. It has to happen on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly basis. We have a lot of plastic in our exposure. We expose ourselves to plastic containers in cooking food or heating up. A lot of microwaves, a lot of electromagnetic radiation from cell phones and devices. So trying to start working on cutting out the plastic utensils from your routine, avoiding unnecessary phone exposures, using flaps or devices that can block the EMF radiation from your phones, using shampoos and body washes that don't have a whole lot of chemicals in it, really looking at what are better products. Environmental Working Group is an organization that looks at all those different things and creates a grading. So ewg.org is a good website to look at and find out which are the good type of personal care products to use that can lower your risk of exposure. Having some indoor plants in your house, pothos, aloe vera, are good fun, are good plants that don't need much care, and they can help clean your indoor air. So having that green light and green exposure from plants helping clean. Getting some clean sources of water, again, not relying on plastic water bottles, but having a reverse osmosis or some form of water cleansing process that you can store in steel-lined or water or glass-lined containers. Sweating something every day so that you can release toxins. You can do it through sauna too. Using some form of green detox smoothies so that you can process and cleanse your toxins that you're getting all the time. Intermittent fasting or water fasting, again, having at least 12 to 13 hours of no food every night, helps you create space in the body, helps your body focus on detoxification and cleansing, and also helps lower inflammation, which is the key to get your body back in good health. Grounding goes back to, again, getting back in touch with the earth. When we walk barefoot on the earth, we exchange our ions in the body and balance that energy. And lastly, cyber detox, as I mentioned, we need a break from the amount of media exposure that we have. So define a day in a week that you limit your media exposure, limit your electronic devices exposure, or some time every day that you have which can help you unwind and detox from all that chatter that we get throughout the day. Emotional health, again, very important. Right mind is necessary for the right body. We may have issues in our relationships. Working on forgiveness is a huge, huge step along with gratitude, because studies show that when we develop gratitude and we use forgiveness, we actually heal our emotional wounds and helps change the chemistry in our brain and our body that helps us heal from old injuries. Because unless you do that, you're going to carry old wounds which are going to eventually turn into diseases over the time because of your energy is changing, your hormone levels changing. So when you forgive someone, you're actually doing more good to yourself than to anybody else. So practice daily forgiveness and gratitude to work on healing yourself on a daily basis. Positive thinking in the same aspect. Again, when we do that, we release endorphins, we release serotonin. Those are hormones and chemicals that helps us lower cortisol in our body, helps us put us ease, increase the healing ability of our body. So mind, body, spirit, and connecting those in line and aligning them with our nature is the ultimate goal of how we can heal ourselves. And so balancing the 5 elements, focusing on eating whole plant foods in a minimally processed or non-processed forms, avoiding foods that have a lot of negative energy. Foods that are loaded with positive energy are the fruits, vegetables, beans, and whole grains. Foods that have a lot of negative energy are foods from animal aspects or foods that are highly modified or processed. Being active, connecting back to nature, having the rest and relaxation, having the positive mindset, and detoxifying from all aspects, mind and body. That is your recipe to work towards regaining health. And I'll end with these 2 quotes. When the diet is wrong, the medication is of no use, and when the diet is correct, medication is of no need. That's a very well-known proverb from Ayurveda. And Hippocrates said that the natural healing force within each of us is the greatest force in getting well. So with all that, peace and tranquility and healing, work your best to get back into nature and align yourself to the best force in the world to heal yourself. Thank you.